Hey, it's me, MLB. Here is part 9 of the Miss Hashira. Enjoy. So you know how to do all this stuff then, you said, referring to his fire-making skills. I guess, he said, as he walked over and picked up another large stick. And Mum and Dad? You asked, leaving your leading question open for him to follow through with it. And twin brother, he added after a pause. Oh, where are they now? All still at home? You asked hopefully. He shook his head sadly. No, they're not here anymore. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to say it so, happily. You apologized. That's fine, he replied. You felt kinda bad then, and so sat there and looked at the dark ground, wondering if you should say anything else. I should be thanking you though, he said after a few minutes of silence. You asked, looking up at him in the dark. Thank me? Why? Because I remembered something before. When you told me about your past, I too lost a family member to a demon. My twin brother. You did? You asked, with sadness but surprise that he had opened up to you. Yeah, he replied, gathering the last of the wood into a pile and grabbing another small stick and some strong grass to make a makeshift flint. You couldn't really see what he was doing, but you could hear the sounds of wood knocking together, as well as the small hiss of grass threads as they shook every time they moved. What about your mum and dad? You then asked him. He shook his head again as he started to work at getting the fire started in the dark. No, Mum was always ill, as I said, but she kept getting more and more sick, and Dad had gone out to get a certain type of plant to make her better. He grunted a little as he put more effort into getting the fire started, and you stared as a small tendril of smoke rose up from where he was rapidly spinning the wood sticks against a small wooden board, the tendril barely visible in the darkness, only showing up as a slightly darker moving mass in the air between you. You remained silent, watching. A small flame suddenly licked out from under the wood stick, and you leaned forwards to get a better look. Slowly the fire grew as he placed more and more kindling against it, then slightly larger sticks, and then even bigger sticks, until he had the beginnings of a nice little fire, and you looked at him. Dad never came back that night. It was a really bad storm, and Mum didn't make it, he said, looking into the fire, the small flames reflecting in his eyes and making them shine more than usual. Your heart wrenched in your chest, and you got up and walked over to him and then sat down beside him and turned so you could give him a hug. He was surprised at first to have your arms around him, but then smiled softly and relaxed a little. Thank you, he said softly, and you smiled. It's okay. You remained that way for a little bit, with your arms around him, and although he didn't reciprocate, you could feel that he didn't mind you giving him a hug. Hey, also, can I spit this leaf out? You suddenly asked. Do you still have it in your mouth? He asked with surprise. Yes, because you never told me to spit it out, so I've just left it there under my tongue, you said. Oh, yes, spit it out. I'll make a tea for you, he said. So you let him go and leaned away so you could spit the mushed leaf out onto the ground. Why under my tongue anyway? You asked. Well, for 2 reasons. 1, so you don't swallow it, and 2, there's a vein under your tongue that absorbs straight into the bloodstream. That's what Dad said anyway. He said. Your dad was a very knowledgeable man, you replied with an impressed head nod. Handy to have herbal and bush knowledge. Yeah, I agree, he said as he got up. There's a stream that way. He then pointed off into the dark. I can hear it. I'll get some water for the tea. You nodded and watched as he walked off into the bush. You sighed with delight as he disappeared from sight. We were actually talking and having a whole conversation then, and it didn't even feel forced. Wait, how's he going to collect the water? With his hands? You wondered internally. It wasn't long till he returned. He had found a giant leaf with which to carry the water in and carried it over to you for you to hold it. Wow, you said, as you looked at him carrying this giant leaf with water collected in it. That's cool, but how are you going to boil that? The leaf will burn. I know, he said calmly as he handed you the leaf to hold. Hold this for me. You took it from him and watched as he walked around a little bit and then picked up a rock and looked it over. He hummed, feeling the weight of it and then looking up into the sky. You watched, your eyebrow furrow getting deeper and deeper with confusion when you couldn't work out what he was doing. "What are you doing?" you finally asked, unable to hold your query any longer. He asked, looking from the sky then over at you. "What are you doing?" you asked again. "It's gonna rain later," he said vaguely. Okay, but I'm holding a giant leaf with water in it. You're holding a rock and looking at the sky, and you said it's gonna rain. I'm not following how all of these things are related." "They're not really," he replied. "This rock is going to be made into a cup to boil the water in, and I'm reading the sky. It's probably going to rain. I don't want you to get wet." "But don't worry about me. What about you?" you asked. "I'm concerned about you. I have to get you back safely to the others," he replied, finally looking like he was doing something that was going to advance the cause of water being boiled. You thought about saying something, but then decided against it. His concern over you was really endearing, and you just decided to simmer in his comment and not say anything else, lest he say something that broke the spell. You liked the idea that he was concerned about you. More so the possible delusion that it was because he liked you. You suddenly remembered that he had kissed you not even 5 hours ago, and you sat there in the dark grinning to yourself. You thought that it was dark enough and that he was busy enough that he didn't notice your eerie smile into the abyss of darkness, the flames of the fire only just licking at the corners of your form. But he was keeping his attention on you a lot more at the moment, so he could keep tabs on how you were recovering. So it was while he was mid getting another rock to grind a shallow hole in the first rock that he stopped and looked directly at you. "You're smiling," he commented. You quickly dropped your smile. You asked, pretending like you hadn't just been aimlessly smiling off into the darkness. "You are smiling," he said again. What if I was?" you asked vaguely. "I like it when you're happy," he commented, and you tried really hard not to smile again. I like it when you're happy too," you parroted back. "What does that mean, to be happy?" he asked, tilting his head a little to ponder the thought. "Well, I get happy when I'm around you," you said softly and shyly. It was quiet for a second, and he picked up the rock that he had chosen for the job, and then stood up and walked back over to the fire to start work. Your heartbeat started to get a little heavier the longer it was taking for him to say something, and you thought that maybe you'd said too much in that short sentence. But as he started to grind the rocks together, he stopped and looked up at you. "Do you feel a little lighter when you're happy?" he asked. You nodded. "Oh," he replied, looking back down again and working on his rock grinding. You waited. Is he going to say anything else? You wondered. "Do you feel like you want to smile and laugh when you're around me?" he asked, pausing again in his work. You nodded silently again. "Oh," he said again, and resumed his work. "And?" your brain screamed at you. "I feel that too," he said, stopping again to look at you. "I think I feel happy around you too," he replied, and his eyes glowed and danced in the light of the fire, a small smile pulling at the corners of his lips. You couldn't help but grin then, and pulled your knees up to your chest, half of your smiling face being hidden by your kneecaps as you held the leaf of water out in front of you a bit. "I'm glad," you mumbled from behind your knees. It took Muichiro a little while to make the rock bowl for boiling water, but finally he had made it, and you poured the leaf water contents into it, and then watched him place it gently in the fire to boil before disappearing to get some more of that plant to make you a tea. And there ends part 9. Stay tuned for next week. Part 10 will be up at the usual time, usual place. Thank you so much to all those who have been sending positivity towards me for my voice getting better, those who have been sharing in my sympathies, those who have been the prayer warriors, all of those who have manifested. I feel like my voice would give it maybe like 1 or 2 more days, and I'll be like back on it. As you can tell, like when I go like really high, it kind of like drops out a little bit. It's a bit weird. Thank goodness I don't talk that high, but yeah, hopefully I can start the Kuro book soon, and I'll be back on track. But I'll see you next week for part 10. See you then.